Sony's long-awaited return to the VR scene is upon us, and many of you either have a PSVR 2 in hand or are looking at getting one, and we at the VR Grid wanted to help you with making decisions on what games to pick up at launch. Whether you are a VR veteran coming from the PSVR 1, Quest, or PC, or brand new to VR, we have you covered with our top 15 must-own PSVR 2 launch titles. Hey guys, it's Chris from the VR Grid and welcome to the channel. As always, if you like this video, please hit that like button for us, and if you want more content for all things VR, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you want even more VR goodness, you can check out the Virtual Boys podcast live here on the channel each and every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific. And with that, here's our top 15 must-own PSVR 2 launch games. A list, I might add, was incredibly hard to rank, as it truly depends on what type of games in VR you like. We think we've got you all covered, but please feel free to leave us a comment and give us your top games. Kicking off our list is Townsman VR. Combining classic city building mechanics and God sim world building gameplay, Townsman is a true VR treasure that offers up a level of immersion only possible in VR. Previously only available on PC VR, Townsman VR lets players choose either story mode or free play and build a small village up into a living world across 13 different islands. Battle, build, harvest, and manage resources, all while literally interacting with the world around you. Guys, this is leisure VR at its finest, and if you haven't experienced an open God world game in VR yet, you are truly missing out on one of VR's greatest experiences. The Light Brigade is up next, and for me was one of my most anticipated launch titles, as I love a good roguelite shooter. Unfortunately at launch, Light Brigade doesn't support foveated rendering, and the result is a version of the game that simply doesn't have the sharpness I think that we expect from this generation of the PSVR. That being said, the Light Brigade is delightfully addicting and will definitely fight for playtime in my library, as its game loop and tight gunplay is first-rate VR. Clockwinder, what we like to call a clone-like, is one of the best puzzle games of 2022 and now jumps to the PSVR 2. Despite sharper visuals and improved tracking, little has changed here from the PSVR 1 version, which keeps this lower on our list. But for puzzle fans, this is for you. Using gloves that allow you to loop events in time, you must team up with yourself, and in true Rube Goldbergian design, you must repair an ancient clock tower built into the trunk of a colossal tree. Guys, this again is a true VR gem and just oozes quality from its gameplay to its audio design. Synth Riders is next on our list, and really only lower on this list because it's been out for a while and mileage can really vary depending on how much DLC you want to buy. That being said, Synth Riders is an absolute experience on PSVR 2 with improved visuals, better tracking, DualSense haptics, and near instant load times. This dance rhythm game is must-own VR for fans of the genre. Next on the list is After the Fall, a Left 4 Dead type team-based shooter from the developer that made the classic VR game Arizona Sunshine. With its rinse and repeat game loop, I felt this was light on content when it first launched, but this release sees 2 new maps join the collection of added maps since launch and makes this feel like a much more complete offering. The PSVR 2 version adds DualSense and head haptics along with a significant boost to the visuals for those who may have played only the Quest or PSVR 1 version. Disappointingly though, the game doesn't yet support eye tracking, and that does keep its visuals from reaching that of the PC version. However, it does play great and is a must for fans of shooters looking at something to dive into at launch. Moss Book 2, and for that matter, Moss Book 1 as well, take the next spot on our list. Both getting the PSVR 2 treatment, they're lower on the list only because they've been out for a while. Both Moss Book 1 and 2 are VR classics in their own right, single-handedly proving how amazing third-person games can be in VR. These PSVR 2 versions see a drastic improvement in their visuals with a level of detail, fidelity, and frame rate simply not possible before. Throw in improved haptics and the PSVR 2 release of these titles makes these the definitive versions to play. Next on our list is a little game called No Man's Sky. VR is the way this game was meant to be experienced. Lower on our list mainly because the PSVR 2 version doesn't currently seem to be taking advantage of dynamic foveated rendering, and it holds it back from being the visual upgrade that I think we hoped it would be. Regardless, the PSVR 2 version is still a visual upgrade from the PSVR 1 version running on the PS5, and sports a full haptic upgrade featuring both DualSense and head vibrations. No Man's Sky is simply one of the greatest adventures you can take in gaming, and it's a must-own in VR. Kayak VR Mirage is next. While some may write this off because it is essentially just a kayak simulator, Kayak VR Mirage was one of PC VR's best looking games of 2022, And here on the PSVR 2, with its OLED HDR display and the use of dynamic foveated rendering, Kayak VR Mirage is about as close to photoreal VR as I have ever experienced. This is the definition of relaxation in VR as you paddle around some of the world's most beautiful surroundings. But this is also one of my go-to showcase titles for new users, not only for its visuals, but also because of its simple gameplay mechanics, slow movement, and seated play, making it a perfect entrance point for people new to VR. Reminding me of something we may have gotten in VR Worlds back on the original PSVR, Kayak VR Mirage is something special in a sea of new launch releases. Up next is Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. Originally only available on the Quest 2 headset, Tales from the Galaxy's Edge was meant to be the next step up from the Vader Immortal series, offering a larger world to explore, more expansive gameplay, and an emphasis on action. Unfortunately, the ambition of the game was held back by the lower-powered Quest and a lack of content at release. Thankfully, all that has changed as the PSVR 2 version not only contains both parts 1 and 2 of the series, but sees a significantly improved poly count and advanced lighting system that helps the game fully realize its visual potential. Whether you want to grab a blaster and shoot stupid stormtroopers or grab a lightsaber and work on your Jedi abilities, Tales from the Galaxy's Edge finally feels like a complete game on the PSVR 2. Song in the Smoke Rekindle Edition takes the next spot on our list. Potentially one of the most significant PSVR 1 to PSVR 2 upgrades, Song in the Smoke on the PSVR 2 feels like a labor of love from developer 17-bit. From overhauled visuals including foveated rendering, improved lighting, and increased vegetation, to eye-tracked climbing assists and full haptic support, Song in the Smoke has been totally revamped for next-gen VR. If you like survival games, this should definitely be on your short list of games to pick up. And what would any good launch lineup be without a great competitive shooter? Thankfully, one of the biggest military shooters on the PC and Quest finally makes its way over to the PSVR. Yeah, now that we have analog sticks. And while this version doesn't see mods from the PC version, this game boasts a ton of content and modes for both single and multiplayer gamers, including crossplay with the PC version to ensure full lobbies. Pavlov on PSVR 2 has never looked better, and thanks to DualSense implementation, it's also never felt better to play. Shooter fans, this is a must-own. Demeo is our next pick, and there's a reason it makes our top 4, as it is something truly special in VR. Coming out on PC and Quest in 2021, it was absolutely criminal that PSVR headsets never got to play this D&D light RPG dungeon crawler. Well, that all changes with the launch of the PSVR 2 version, and Demeo has only grown in leaps and bounds content-wise over the last 2 years. I cannot tell you how many hours I have lost sitting around a virtual tabletop with friends, but I can tell you that Demeo will surprise you with how addicting and polished its gameplay is. And I'm not even a tabletop fan. Kicking off our top 3, I give you Horizon Call of the Mountain. Some may call this a tech demo, we call it a PSVR 2 showcase title. This is not the sprawling deep experience that the core games in the series are. Instead, Call of the Mountain aims to create a title that screams AAA VR, but also works great as an intro title to VR for the skeptics, the VR newbies, the non-gamers, and the flat gaming masses. Easy to pick up, play, and get lost in, Call of the Mountain gives players a smattering of VR gameplay mechanics and a promise for the future of the PSVR 2 hardware. GT7 is up next and finally delivers on the broken promises we got with GT Sport on the PSVR 1. Well, apology accepted, as GT7 in VR is one of the best, if not the best, VR driving experience I have ever had. This is not a VR version of GT7. This is GT7 in VR. Finally, this felt like a VR racing title that didn't scream compromises. Featuring over 460 perfectly rendered cars and over 40 tracks, this is the complete GT7 experience on and offline. Arguably the best looking launch title, GT7 also plays amazing, either on a racing wheel or using the brilliant DualSense implementation on offer. If you even remotely like racing games, this is mandatory PSVR 2 and a benchmark for VR racing games. And taking the number 1 spot, what the bat? Nope! Of course, it's Resident Evil 8 Village. Playing Res 8 for me was an almost religious experience and continued to blow my jaded VR mind again and again. Forget Half-Life Alyx, people. This is the new benchmark for first-person shooter VR titles. Visually stunning on the PSVR 2, this truly feels like the flat game without compromises, but instead offers a superior gameplay experience with a wonderful two-handed gameplay implementation and some awesome use of the PSVR 2's haptics. Playing more like a sequel to the epic Resident Evil 4 than the previous entry in the series, Resident Resident Evil 8 Village isn't the scare fest that 7 was, but instead goes for a deeper focus on inventory management, pacing, and gunplay. For years, Flat and VR gamers have been waiting for full AAA games in VR without massive visual downgrades. Resident Evil 8 Village is that title. Anyways, guys, that's our top 15 list, but there were a lot of launch titles, and I'm sure some of you have different lists than ours, so please fire off in the comments below. Let others know what you're enjoying. Give us your top 5, your top 10, even your top 1. Let us know. We love to hear from you guys. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you aren't already, and keep it here on the VR Grid for more future PSVR 2 content. As always, guys, I will catch you on my next video.